Okay, thank you. So let me just sum up what I just said. What I just said was that um, there are 8 common food allergens. These are required to be in labels because they are so serious. Not all of them last a lifetime, but a lot of them do. So for people that have a peanut allergy, for example, you need to look at every label that you come across if you're going to eat a product that's in a package. Alternatively, in a perfect world, if you only consumed, whole foods, which is what we dream of, we can do a lot of that, and I do most of that myself. I do practice what I preach, but I use some processed foods like olive oil, which is a processed food, right? So there's some food, cheese, right? That's processed food. So none of us is perfect, but the further we get away from processed, high sugar, high fat, conglomerate, candy, blah, blah, blah type food, the better we are in terms of avoiding these allergies. So it's like some sports bars, for example, or cookies or whatever, may be more likely to have some of these allergens than the dinner you make at home from Whole Foods. Okay. All right, so we talked about the commonality of food allergies, and I don't want you to know any of these numbers, except I want you to think about this, that between 1997 and 2011, more and more children were diagnosed with food allergies. So I mentioned this last time, just keep that in your head again. Okay, so let's go back. So we were talking last time about 2 types of problems that people have with food. One type of problem had to do with intolerances. So for example, lactose intolerance. If you don't have the enzyme lactase, then consuming milk can cause GI distress for you. So that is not an immune reaction that involves immunoglobulin E. That is just a sensitivity. Okay, so the sensitivities mean I eat this, I don't feel good, I'm gonna stop eating this. And some of the foods are the same as the serious ones. However, when we talk about allergens, an allergen that is IgE mediated. Remember, immunoglobulin E, we talked about this last time, is a protein or antibody produced by the immune system. And unfortunately, in the case of allergies, we make too much of it. So if you're a person with a normal response to peanuts, you don't make antibodies to anything on the peanut. But if you're someone that does have a reaction to peanuts, then when you consume it, that sets a whole system going up where your body makes too many IgE molecules. And what that does is sets the stage for a really bad reaction next time you're exposed to that food. Now I'll bring this up again. I know this is complex, but I just want you to understand the concept. So let me bring this up again. So let's say there's a family with a 5-year-old boy, a 2-year-old girl, and a new baby. The 5-year-old boy doesn't have a peanut allergy. The 2.5-year-old doesn't have a peanut allergy. We don't know if the third kid is going to or not. You can't go by genes. You've got to figure out how to respond to things. So just kind of hold on there. Okay, but if they do have an allergy, what happens is they get exposed to something and it ramps up their immune system with too many IgEs, and so they're sensitive. So look at the last term here. Before an IgE, which is immunoglobulin E mediated food allergy manifests, the person must first be sensitized to the food item. So in that case, if the 5-year-old, the 2-year-old, the new baby, the baby could have exposure to peanuts before it ever eats them. If the kids are eating peanut butter, for example, peanuts are really bad about getting the environment. Think of it like COVID, only worse in some ways. But so there's peanut molecules in the household. The little kid could get actually sensitized to peanuts in that way. That's one way. Just keep going. So notice how I ended this lecture with sensitized. Sensitization matters. Sensitization precedes, that means it comes before the development of IgE-mediated allergies. Okay, so take a breath here. Think about where you were in your vocabulary starting the course, right? What did you know? Did you know about sensitization? Did you know about IgE-mediated allergies? You know, so what we're doing here is we're building we're building on our knowledge to become more conversant in issues such as this. So a lot of times a lot of what we do is definitions. So, or just becoming familiar with words. So before an IgE-mediated food allergy manifests, a person must first be sensitized. Okay, so sensitization precedes development of these allergies. This is another way of saying this. So here you are. Let's say it's not in an environment, you just eat it. Food allergen. The word is antigen, and antigen is something that stimulates an immune response. It's a simple definition. It stimulates an immune response. So food allergen, how many of them are there?
8.
Thank you. There's 8 common food allergens, right? So food allergen, and if it's something that stimulates the immune system, the term is also antigen, okay? Or absorbed through the intestinal lining. You have your first almond, okay? Peanut, whatever. So then what happens is the body creates an immune response. You kind of saw how that happens, right? You develop, you sensitize cells, they start producing more IgE, it sets the stage for a reaction. So the body's like, yeah, this is a foreign object. I recognize this as a foreign object, and I'm gonna fight against it. So then what happens in the body is we produce antibodies for that particular item. That's a sensitization. So if it's peanuts, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7, 8-year-old, 8-month-old kid, let's do this, 8-month-old kid, first exposure to peanuts, has a problem, creates an immune response. And then they're set up. So what happens here, if they produce a lot of antibodies, it's like they're cocked and ready to go. If they don't see peanuts for a long time, that's fine. But if they get them again, it's like they have amassed an army of combatants in their immune system. So then the kid gets the exposure to that same allergen again, and they're a mess. Okay, that's when they can start having serious responses. So getting set up where you get this first exposure, that is sensitization, and that is priming the system to be sensitive to that particular item. Okay, so I want to take a moment here and see if you guys have any questions about this. Does this make sense? If anybody has a question, I want to know. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm remembering other parts of the lecture from before where we said that if we expose children to foods before the 6 months, it could prevent them from developing an allergy. So I'm confused about how that idea works.
Yeah, I can't hear you, but because you chopped in and out, but I think what you're saying, and I'm actually in the middle of the story here, so it's a really good question. Okay, so what this issue has to do with is the timing. Okay, and I was getting to that point. So my examples were here where you're an 8-month-old child and you have exposure, right? And so it seems that, I'm going to jump ahead to my final conclusions. What the literature has shown, and allergies are complicated, so I'm sorry if this sounds complicated, but it is. So it is. So, but what happens is, what we did is we realized peanut allergies are serious. So we stopped giving peanuts to anybody. You know, no peanut, no childcare or something. And then if kids, so nobody had early exposure, like 4 to 6 months. So more and more kids had them later, and later seemed to be worse in terms of protecting them. So it's a complicated story. So just bear with me here because it's very interesting. This is one of the most interesting areas of infant and toddler nutrition because so many people are affected by allergies and because it's complicated. So I'm going to end up with a common sense recommendation. Okay, so, but the thing is, everybody's different. You can't always predict this stuff either. I've known kids that are the first kid in the family, you know, and at 8 months they gave him peanuts and he went into anaphylactic shock, and then that says the world. Okay, so it's complicated, but we're learning. So sensitization, that first exposure matters. So you might find this to be interesting too. I'm not going to do this because this is more detailed than I feel like talking about. This is a review of what we talked about. So here's your antigen. Remember, that's like peanut butter protein. One of your immune cells goes, oh, okay, I want to make IgE, immunoglobulin E, and you make a lot of them. And then you've got some cells in your immune system that are just ready and go, hey, if you eat peanuts again, I'm on it, right? And so that's kind of what this is showing. So if you do that, then they're ready to go. And then also people that have persistent allergies set up a memory in their body. So even if they don't have peanuts for 3 years, they have one later and they still have the same reaction. Okay, so this is, go.
Oh, sorry. Somebody in the chat asked if sensitization has to happen every time for an allergy, or does it just depend?
Okay, what I like about that question is you're really thinking hard about this, and thank you, because I spend a lot of time thinking hard about things too to make sure I'm accurate. And it is my understanding that since, let's go to here, sensitization happens, but it does not always lead to an allergy. So I think that, yes, sensitization precedes the development of an allergy. So if you're a person that's never encountered a protein from peanut ever in your whole life, the first time you encounter it, you're not going to die from anaphylactic shock. But your first encounter can sensitize your system, and then you're at risk. So some people go full steam ahead. I've had this exposure. I'm going to have such a severe reaction to peanuts that my life is ruled by it. But other people get sensitized, but they don't have such a strong reaction. So so I think, yes, there has to be, I think I'm right on this, there has to be a previous exposure before that allergy happens. But you may not know about the exposure, and that's what's interesting. So my example of, here's a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a baby in the house. You know, do you know if the 5-year-old like kissed the baby on the lips with peanut butter in his mouth? Probably. You don't know that, but the children slam all over each other, right? So you don't really know where that exposure happens. So since we don't know if they're going to get exposed, I'm going to get to this, but the long story is early and often, go ahead and give them, this is taking away the punchline of this, but now instead of keep away, where we don't give anybody peanuts for years, let's go ahead and get them between 4 and 6 months because they seem to do better than if you put it off. So I know it's complicated, but just hang with me here, okay? Let me talk a little bit more and let's do some more questions here. Okay, so here was where I know I'm repeating what I did last time, but I felt like since I felt so bad, I wasn't doing such a good job of explaining, so I want to be sure. So this was an example of ragweed, because some of you said, yes, I have this allergy. So the first time an allergy-prone person runs across an allergen such as ragweed, oh, you're priming your immune system. We've just talked about this. The beta cells, remember? Those cells produce IgE, right? We've already talked about this as an IgE-mediated response. They attach themselves, These are the IgEs to mast cells. And then the second time this person has a brush with ragweed, their cells go nuts. They go, oh, we've had a problem with this before. I'm going to put out all the chemicals I can, like histamine, cytokines, and all this kind of stuff. And the reaction of your immune system is much worse than you would ever want it to be. It's so bad that it can close up your airways. Histamine can close up your airways. And so this is a overreaction. Allergies are an overreaction to stimulus. So you can replace, in your studying, you can replace ragweed with peanut. Okay, let me keep going, then we'll do. So we've all heard about anaphylactic shock, right? This is in a worst case scenario where an allergy attack goes bad. I mentioned him last time, but I have a 7-year-old grandson who's got severe peanut allergy, and he is on the brink. His parents feel like he's on the brink of death every day because he's got to make sure, they've got to make sure that his environment is safe. Do they take him to the mall? No, he doesn't anymore. But to the mall, to a soccer game, to school, to a restaurant. Okay, where you go, if someone is so allergic to something that their exposure could kill them, in the world, it's a game changer, right? So what is anaphylaxis? It's a severe symptom. It's just more than one organ at a time, and it can kill people, and the most common cause is peanuts. So my grandson has a peanut allergy, but he also has a couple more. His father's a doctor, so that's good. And so they have tried to expose him to peripheral tree nuts and run him to the hospital too because he's not okay. So it's a scary, terrifying situation for this guy. So anaphylactic shock or reaction, here's your antigen like your peanuts, here's your beta cell, here's your IgEs, here's the binding to the mast cell. And so we're set up here, we've already gone through this. And then here comes the same antigen, like peanuts. Okay, so what happens is it hypersensitizes these cells. So here's your peanut proteins, and it causes a binding with this, wow, we're overreacting with IgE, we're overreacting here. We're gonna produce so much histamine that your body can't handle it. So instead of just being, like you have a cough because of ragweed, you go, oh my goodness, I'm having trouble here, I'm coughing a lot. You take an antihistamine, you feel better. A food reaction is so bad that so much histamine is produced that you can't breathe. And then that's your anaphylactic reaction. Any questions about this? I know it's complicated, but in reality, what I want you to understand is that exposures matter, and then we'll get to the guidelines for kids, and I want you to make sure you understand those. But I could leave out all the detail about telling the story, but then I don't think many of you would have questions. Well, what's the story? Why is this an issue? So that's why I tell the stories. So questions?
Somebody in the chat asked, what's the difference between IgE mediated and non-IgE mediated allergies?
Okay, so we go back to one of the original slides, and we talked about food reactions. And the food reactions can be IgE mediated, which is this whole immune system thing where you produce those particular antibodies. Non-IgE mediated means you just have a reaction to food, but this whole process isn't going on. So an example of non-IgE mediated would be, I drink milk, my stomach hurts. Lactose intolerance. Okay, that is a food intolerance or sensitivity. Well, I don't do well with milk. But you don't have this part of the immune system tearing down your whole body. So what you do if you have lactose intolerance is you stop drinking milk or use milk that's lactate free or yogurt or whatever. But with this stuff, because the reaction is IgE mediated, and it can be so strong, this can be potentially lethal. So what I'm going to ask you to do is go back through the lecture yesterday and this lecture again, because we talk about the difference between IgE mediated and non-IgE mediated. And as a nutritionist, it's a really good idea for you to know the difference. If you work with people, they're gonna ask you, look, I have trouble when I eat this. Do you think I'm allergic? What should I do? Right, so what do you need to know? Well, what are the common allergens? When did this start? Have you had trouble since you were a little kid? How bad is your reaction, right? So this lecture is kind of building a foundation for these questions. Now they're focused on young kids because for young kids it's life and death. But so understanding the difference between a hyperactive immune response and an intolerance is a really good place to start. Thank you. Great question.
So there's no clear-cut way to prevent allergies?
No, we're not done. Hang with me.
Okay, okay.
I've got you sitting, this is where I want you, you're on the edge of your seat and you can't wait. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's finish the story here. So somebody has an allergy, they need EpiPens. I don't know if you, I'm a what's the word, a junkie of policy. So I have several other lives, right? One of my lives is I'm concerned about the environment and all the things that happen. Another part of my life is I'm very concerned about current events and regulations and how that affects the world at large, right? And so I also think, and another one of my issues is public health and who has access to health, public health, and how do we make this egalitarian for everybody? So I have a lot of, my umbrella of issues is big, and sometimes it rolls into some of these questions. So I want to bring this up. So how many of y'all heard of an EpiPen? Just somebody say yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So an EpiPen, if you have a kid that you think might have an allergy, you need to have an EpiPen. Okay. And you need to have, they come in buckets of 2, and you need to have an EpiPen for whoever's with that kid. Okay, so an EpiPen is epinephrine, and that's the same thing as adrenaline, and this combats the effects of anaphylaxis. So let's say I'm an 8-month-old baby. I have my first peanut. I'm fine. I have my second peanut the next day or a week later, and I'm like having this anaphylactic shock. What best case scenario? Your parents have an EpiPen, and they boom, pop you. And then you're fine because epinephrine will combat the effect of histamines. Like if your histamine is closing up your trachea, adrenaline will open it back up. So it stops you from dying, right? If your airway is closed, you're going to die in a short period of time. If it opens back up, you're okay. So people that have severe allergies need EpiPens. Okay. So here's the politics of this kind of stuff. So this is probably 3 years ago now. But so just a personal story. So my grandson, the first one, his parents were worried that he had a peanut allergy. And I said, no, I don't think so. But he ate peanut butter and threw up. And I said, well, I wonder if it's your peanut butter or something in your house, because we don't have any history of allergies. Do you think it's okay? And you know, but the thing is, they go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you don't know. And they're absolutely right. You don't know. Since you don't know, and he threw up after that first exposure, you better get these EpiPens ready. And they're right, because what if he has his reaction again and they're at home and they can't get him to the pediatric ER fast enough to open up his airways, right? It's so scary, right? And so they're right. So what people have had to do with any kind of reaction to peanuts is buy these shots and buy these little kits. Anybody remember any of this stuff? Do you have any idea how much these things cost?
No.
I was just going to say, I used to have a really severe bee allergy because I was stung, I don't know how, but I was stung 8 times before I was like 20 or 21. And then the 8th time I got stung, I went into anaphylactic shock, and I went to the ER, and all they did was give me like a bunch of Benadryl. And so afterwards I got 3 EpiPens. Luckily I had insurance, but I think without insurance it would have been $500 around.
Yeah.
they're very expensive. And now that I have them, I've never been stung again.
Sorry, I mean, it's not funny. I'm sorry. I'm a sarcastic laugher.
No, it is funny. It's very ironic.
Ironic. Okay. Irony is different than funny. Okay. So what happened? This, I swear these things jump when I'm not talking to them. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. So my story with my daughter, because they took the kid in and, you know, they were worried about it. So she had to buy this. It was $500 because their insurance wouldn't cover it. It was $500 for 2 of these. They never used them, and they go bad within a year. And they give you 2 because, you know, they give you 2 for a good reason. One is that'll save their life. And the second one is people have a reaction like 2 hours later. And so you need the other one. But here's the thing. If your kid goes into anaphylactic shock, or if you're caring for a kid, hit them with the first EpiPen and then go to the ER. You bring the other one along just for fun, right? So that's perfect scenario. But what if you're snowed in Maine or something? Okay, so in that case, we don't understand snow here in Texas, but if you can't get to an emergency room, then you'll need 2 of them because the first one will protect them, and then they're going to come back with another wave of reaction. So these are so easy to use. I've got a video posted of little kids using them, and you just smash it onto their thigh, and it comes in, and you know, so they're cool products. But here's what I wanted to say, and I'm just going to do this for a minute because I can get off on this stuff too much. But one of the pharmaceutical industries, one of the CEOs of the new pharmaceutical industry, came across this and raised the price considerably, so that, you know, $500 is a whole lot of money. And you know, I monitor my language when I'm talking to classes, but I have other language for this. But that's a lot of money. Think about you if you had to pay $500 just to put something on the counter in case you needed it within the next year, right? You're all strapped, right? Everybody in this country is strapped right now, right? So $500 is not trivial. So what if somebody raised the price, and then we don't have a healthcare system in the United States to take care of people that don't have insurance? So so what's going on is there are sitting ducks in our country, and Texas is one of the worst states about this, where there's no safety net. Okay, so there's not a safety net. So if you're a child, if you're not in a family that has usual health care and comfort with their healthcare provider and this whole thing of continuity of healthcare, you don't know what to do, right? And it's so expensive. This is what, half a month's rent for the food for the house? And then anyway, so a person came in from one of these companies, I'm not going to go off on it, and increase the cost of this stuff because they could. And then what happened after that is there was some pushback and people made the cost lower. But okay, I just want to let you know, I'm trying to think about a really good way to put this. Advocacy is important. People that don't have enough resources to take care of themselves, in particular children and their families, need our advocacy if we're so minded. Okay, so EpiPens are expensive. My daughter threw hers away because I was right. I don't mean to be like that, but I am like them, kind of jerk. But he didn't have a peanut allergy. I didn't think he did. Actually, I went into their house and they had 2 jars of peanut butter. I'm like, you know, how long has this been open? You know, because I'm a jerk. Anyway, so this tells you how to do it. It's very easy, and I have videos posted too. You just smash it into your leg, mid-thigh. It can go through, you know, clothed or unclothed, and then the kids learn about it when they get these, and it's not that hard. And you know, you may be afraid of shots, but this is not a scary thing. So that's just how to do it.
Before we move on, we had a question and a comment. What would happen if a child used an EpiPen and wasn't having an allergic reaction?
Then they'd be a little wired. I don't know if you guys have ever taken a Sudafed. Okay, prednisone is like this. So I am suffering horribly from a tennis elbow. Right, talk about privilege, right? So it's affecting my pickleball game, right? And so what I get for that is steroids. right? And so you can get steroids for different things, and prednisone is one of them, and it can make you crazy and you can't sleep very well, but it helps with inflammation. It won't hurt you. Okay, so the drugs won't kill you. If you take the drug, you're okay. You can be wired though. Steroid hormones can make you a little bit crazy, but you know, COVID, we're all a little bit crazy, but it's okay. Thank you. I love your questions, you guys. Okay, so let's get back to this. This gets back to the question, how an allergy is diagnosed. And the question was, what's the difference between IgE allergy and non-IgE allergy? Or this is better, go ahead and cross out allergy and say reaction. I tell you, I spend like 10 billion hours on these slides and then I go, wow, what idiot wrote that? Okay, so non-IgE food reaction, change it and write food reaction. It's not really an allergy in the same way. So if you have a real allergy, like peanuts, milk, soy, quack, 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 then somebody will take a diet history and they'll find out what the food triggers are and figure out, hey, you know, when did this happen? And you ate peanuts, how long later was it that you had the reaction? You know, if it's a week later, that's ridiculous. It's not an allergy, right? So the timing matters. And then if it's a sensitivity like lactose intolerance, they're just going to have GI upset. They're not going to have, you know, the serious symptoms. But either way, you go, you know what, stop eating that for a while. But if you have an IgE allergy, that's when you want to pull in the medical profession and have some guidance on how to manage this. Some allergies are never outgrown. It's just really sad, but they're never outgrown. But these intolerances may not be such a big deal. Anybody else? Okay, I have a fun thing to bring in here. So like all of this is fun. I know you know that, but this is like super fun. So I should say, or like an accelerated funness here. What if, picture your, okay, so my newest grandson is 4.5 months old, right? He's not eating food yet, but he's got 2 siblings that are just like cauldrons of filth. They're playing outside, they're full of food all over them. You know, they've got all the allergens on them, right? There's a dog, there's all this stuff going on. It looks like even if he hasn't eaten anything, damn it, I just swear, I did not do that. If it touches his skin, it could even make him sensitized. Isn't that so weird? This is just a fun fact. So let's say they go, you know what, let's say that they don't know any better. They go, let's don't give him any peanuts till he's age 1. Or let's wait. So, but he gets his skin exposure, and sometimes the skin exposure is a sensitization. So it doesn't have to be the first time they eat it, it could be on their skin. This may be more than you want to know. I won't ask you this question, but I like to share cool stuff with people because this is the kind of stuff that makes me continually interested in science. So all you need to know for the class is you need 1 exposure to be sensitized. If you're going to have an allergy, it could manifest after that. But I'm just telling you the skin could be a factor.
Somebody in the comments asked if mild reactions can be considered an intolerance or an allergy.
We don't
Or mild rashes.
Oh yeah, man, rashes are crazy because I love that question because I'm talking about the major element and what's going to kill you, but a lot of kids have reactions to food for it doesn't matter at all. Like their first bites of pineapple or citrus, their mouth can get all red around it. It's fine. Those aren't allergenic compounds, but they can cause a skin reaction. Citrus, lime, whatever, pineapple. And if they do that a lot, you know, you could put some kind of lotion barrier on there and they're fine. But no, those aren't the same things. Now, breathe, you know, we worry about the breathing and overall immune response, but people have like, you know, local reactions to stuff that's okay. And what I would do too as a young parent is a professional, and then a young parent as a professional, I would keep looking this up. It's one of the reasons we have this research project for you, is that so you learn how to investigate an issue, because this issue of allergies is an ongoing study. We're learning more and more and more about how to handle them. We're not perfect, but we're learning more. So if you end up working as a dietitian or a nutritionist working with young children, then you're going to have to keep up on your homework here. So these guys are doing the best they can. And this is the science part of it, but there's some open questions. So back to this, if there's peanuts in the house, they can become part of dust, which is what I already told you. And there's some soaps that have hippie stuff in them. I don't know how much you guys spend on soap, but I think we've been taken by the industry on, well, you need this soap for this and this and this and this. And there's all these compounds in there, and some of them may even aggravate potential for allergy. It's so weird. So, but this is a take-home message. The more diverse the children's diets, less likely any of these things are going to happen. So if they get a wide variety of food early and often, real food, they're a lot less likely than if you play keep away. And you say, oh, you can't have any exposure to this for some period of time. So the guidelines have changed, and this has been so interesting in my history of teaching about food allergies and lifespan nutrition. So the old guidelines, 2000 to 2008, they said delay the introduction. Don't give it too early, but you've learned better now, right? We've talked about knowing better than this. So the guidelines have changed. The outdated guidelines said wait. What happened is it didn't help. Okay, so mom doesn't need to avoid them. You don't need to delay it. It doesn't help. Wait, what happened here? Okay, so why do we know this? There's been some amazing studies. One study is the LEAP study. This is one of the best known studies on the planet about peanut allergy. And so we did this, so this study was done, and damn it. And based on these two studies, the American Academy of Pediatrics came up with new guidelines. They said, start early. If it's a peanut allergy, start early. Don't wait till a year. Don't wait till 8 months. As soon as you start that early feeding, start with peanuts if you're worried about it. So here's a summative statement from the American Academy of Pediatrics. There's no reason for parents to delay allergen introduction. In fact, parents should introduce allergens as early as 4 to 6 months. In addition, they simplify the advice for prevention by recommending early allergen introduction as a first line of defense. So you guys are probably thinking, well, this is complicated and we've been through a lot of things. So I have trouble just teaching facts without giving you background, because background makes you knowledgeable. And so let me go back over this again. So the fact is, don't delay. They say 4 to 6 months. We've said, 6 months, and they also say 6 months is probably the best time to start offering new food, right? Offering complementary foods. We've been through this. There's a mushy place, 4 to 6 months. But if you're worried about food allergies, don't wait. When the kid is ready, between 4 and 6 months, that means, remember, they can sit up, they can hold their head, they can tell you what they want, they can open their mouth and take a spoon, they can close their mouth, they can turn their head away if they don't want it anymore. Remember all those things? Okay, if a kid is ready for that, then don't wait several months to offer these high allergen items. Go ahead and throw it in there. And so that's where the recommendations are. So the final recommendations are introduce common allergenic foods starting as early as 4 to 6 months. babies at high risk, 4 to 6 months. Everybody should have exposure to the first year of life. So what we have learned in the past 10, 15 years is go ahead and offer the allergens. Okay, so I'm real interested if there's any more questions about this.
I have a question. So say you start introducing these complementary foods for a baby that is high risk for a peanut allergy, and you start introducing peanut containing foods and there is a small reaction in the infant. Should you at that point immediately stop giving any peanut containing foods, or like switch the dosage of how much you should be giving the infant at that point?
Okay, so I like your question so much because what that is a practical question. And what we do, we go from theoretical to what do you actually do? And so because peanut allergies are so severe, what we need to talk about is what do you tell parents, right? And so what I would say, like my daughter and you know, with her baby throwing up peanuts, should she have gone to the doctor? Oh yeah, because what if he'd had a peanut allergy? So if you suspect an allergy, do it, because what they can do is they can set up protocols where you go, okay, I'm going to come to your office and we're going to give the next dose of peanuts. And I'm just going to sit, they have setups like this. I'm going to sit here for 2 or 3 hours, see how the kid does. So there's, and you know, so there's ways to get around this because it's really scary. You're out in the world by yourself and you're afraid your kid has this. And what if you don't have the EpiPen already? And what if it's not really an allergy? Or what if it is? It's really serious, right? So when my daughter, you know, with her kid was like, you know, I'm worried, I'm like, go. And then they said, you need an EpiPen. I'm like, get it. I didn't think she needed it, but man, what if I was wrong? You know, and I don't know enough, honestly, just like most of us. Unless you can have an IV thing where you take the IgE titer of a kid in your household, you don't know how to predict it. So all we can go is on the evidence. And so err on the side of caution. But this is, I will tell you that this is going to be one of the, those of you that work with families and kids and stuff, this is one of the biggest issues coming down the pike because we've been wrong about it and it ruins people's lives. But I don't feel dogmatic about it. I would, if I had a kid, if I was taking care of a little kid right now and they started showing a reaction, I'd run over to the doctor too. I'd go check stuff.
Do you know if at that point you take them to an allergist or physician because they showed a reaction? At that point, is it, and it's in regards to peanuts, is it an immediate, okay, we now identified that this infant does have a peanut allergy? Or I guess, sorry, my question is, if once they find out the child has a peanut allergy, is it completely no peanuts whatsoever, let's start them on some type of immunotherapy? Or is it?
I wish there was immunotherapy that's functional. And I happen to be like up on this on a personal level because my, you know, my grandson, his father's a doctor, right? So they're dealing with all the current stuff about this. And, you know, it's, the situation is dire. What you have to do is be ready for an emergency reaction. There's been some therapies where they've given, I have a lot of things to tell you all about this. This is interesting. There've been some therapies where they've given kids like little, that have had a peanut allergy, little bits of peanut powder. How do you do? How do you do? And if you titrate and it's really tiny, the thought is that you can increase the, decrease the magnitude of the immune response. So you kind of train the immune system to go, oh, come on, this is just peanuts. Right? It's not a big deal. So there's some test going on right now. And my grandson's doing that where he's taking little tiny snippets of this. So that's one thing, but I want to get to something else here. Why do we know so much about this? It's because this has been dealt with in a variety of countries. And one of the countries that gave us information was Israel. The kids are in kibbutzes and they're giving kids, peanuts were normal and their rate of peanut allergies in the community were a whole lot lower. And we're like, why? They have peanuts all the time. Why are they fine? And we restrict peanuts and we've got so much of a problem. So it's very interesting. So these LEAP trials, we're trying to figure out what the difference is. And one of the things they've done is they've made, you guys are probably more pure than I am, but have you ever had a cereal like a puff ball, like a corn puff, cocoa puff, Reese's peanut butter puff? I don't even know what people have now. I don't eat puffs, but I remember loving them as a kid. Do y'all ever had a puff?
Yeah, wasn't it in Israel? The puffs were peanut butter ring puffs.
Yeah, so it was Israel, but also this was, thank you. So this was also followed through in the UK. All right, so they started giving like, so think of Cheeto, if you, those of you guys are much more pure than I am, think of a Cheeto, okay? I don't eat this stuff either, but I would have as a child. But a Cheeto, right? It's just a puff ball of something, or a corn puff or something. So they put peanut protein in that, and that was a way to get the kids started on their peanut exposure, and that constant exposure decreased this whole issue with anaphylactic shock. That's why we know exposure is better than no exposure.
And you were talking about the treatment for titrating small amounts. Is that the same thing as sublingual immunotherapy?
I don't know. One of the things I forgot to tell you guys is that I'm very honest about when I don't know anything. It is what it is. So if you write me an email, I will look it up and get back to the class. But if you don't write me, I will forget we had this conversation. How's that? Okay. Okay. So
We
you
had
guys,
another question in the comments. It seems like food intolerances are more noticeable than a sensitivity. Does it make it harder to detect it until it's too late?
food intolerances are more what? No, a food intolerance and their first reaction to some foods, you know, if it's milk, you have milk and you feel bad. We don't know at that point is, do I have milk allergy and I'm going to go through this IgE thing? Or do I just have lactose intolerance and I'm not doing well and I'm bloated because I'm bringing in water and I'm intestinal tract? So we don't know, right? So we don't always know what's going on. What was the question again? Because I'm confused by it, actually.
That food intolerances are more noticeable than a sensitivity. Does it make it harder to detect, I guess, the food intolerances until it's too late?
Oh, I don't actually know the answer to that question. I don't know. I think it's very individual. Some kids have strong reactions to foods, you know, and some that may take a little while. So I don't know enough. And also what we need to know is this is one of those areas that bridges nutrition and the medical field. So we are not experts on food allergies. We are experts on diet, on how to help people figure it out, what's in food, how to do a diet record, how to advise them, how to avoid high, high allergenic foods, what to do if they have a diagnosed allergy. But we are not the diagnosticians. So what we do is we are part of a team, right? And so if we're part of a team, then the medical people that have tests to run on IgE and do this kind of stuff can tell us where to go from there, because we don't know enough. If someone has a reaction to milk, I tell you what, I would not be confident in going, oh, I know what that is, because I know that has to be tested for. Does that make sense? You can do hydrogen breath analysis for lactose intolerance, for example, or you can look for IgE for milk protein allergies. But those are medical tests that I don't know how to run. I mean, you know, I can figure it out, but it's not what we do.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's, I have another one. Damn it. Okay. Hold on. Forgive my language. By the way, I appreciate you guys' questions more than you could know. Thank you so much. Can y'all see my screen now?
Yes.
I'm ready. Questions? I don't hear, y'all hear me? Nod. I see 4.
Yes, I do.
Does anybody else want to talk? Okay. All right. So this next lecture is on child nutrition. And then the lecture following this on next Monday, there'll be two of them. One will be on the school lunch programs that Kristen is going to give, and then also I'm going to give on child obesity. So this is setting the stage for this stuff. Okay. Okay, so, you know, you may not have much of a sense of humor about this stuff right now, but it seems like the world is like this, right? Especially if you're on the internet and you're looking at what adults say about good dietary practices. You know, everybody has I'm a paleo, I'm this, and there are kids with issues, but anyway. And of course, the irony is, are we gonna have Halloween this year? I don't think so. So, sorry. Okay, let me just go forth with this. So I have some issues on the outline. So we're going to talk about growth, problems, nutrition recommendations, and some other issues. So a way to think about kids to kind of conceptualize them is when they're little, they're pretty skinny unless they have trouble with being overweight. But an early childhood, a normative body type is fairly low in body fat. What happens is they kind of get fat as babies. And then as toddlers, they start moving around more. And then they're typically very mobile between 2 and 4 and 5. And so if they have the opportunity to be mobile, then their body fat's pretty low. So you can see it here. But what happens sometimes is, okay, so normally, let me phrase this right. So normally, kids get fatter at around age 6 to 7. You can see it right here. Okay, the fat goes up, right? The percent body fat goes up. Why does it go up? It's normal. It's hormone driven. It's normal. Okay, so we're used to that happening. And so females get fatter and males get a little bit fatter. And fatter is not a pejorative comment, it just means more percent body fat. And they're going to go through growth spurts. Sometimes kids go through growth spurts earlier. Sometimes they go through it later. But anyway, so it's normal to change their physiology. Okay, so the next concept here is problems for screening. When you're thinking about a kid that's in the preschool or older years, they could have iron deficiency anemia, so you know what the causes of that are. Dental caries, which could be involved with current diet and dental hygiene, right? Overweight, which we're going to talk about quite a bit, eating disorders, skipping breakfast, avoiding specific foods, and snacking. So this age group, where we go from age 4 up to before teens, this age group is a pivotal age group where they may be setting the stage for problems that are going to happen to them later. So for example, we don't want an 8-year-old skipping breakfast to be thin or worried about overweight. We don't want a 9-year-old girl or boy to be going, well, I'm not going to eat this because of this, right? Now, as adults, we probably make specific choices about food groups, you know, like I'm not going to eat white bread, or if I have bread for dinner, I'm just going to have a little bit. We do that. But with kids, we don't want them focusing on their weight. Okay, and so because of advertising and what happens in the world at large, there's a lot of focus on that, and these kids are at high risk. So these are some things to consider. Okay, so first, what about energy? The energy requirements, I actually don't have you calculate them. If this is a medical nutrition therapy class, I would do that. But I really like people to take a kind of broad view of health here. And what we need to realize is that the calorie requirement is all over the board. Look at this. There's math for it. If you're working in a clinical setting or in an outpatient setting, you can do the math on this stuff, right? You can do the equation to figure out what calories they need. But here's an 8-year-old girl. If she's inactive, look how many calories she needs. If she's very active, look how many calories she needs. And so the problem is our food environment is filled with way more calories than what we see here. So even if somebody's very inactive, they're very likely to eat more than they need to do. Okay, remember back in your intro classes, 2360 had an acceptable macronutrient distribution. AMD or AMDR. So this is for kids in the 14 to 18 year group. And you can see that their numbers aren't all that different from those of adults. So we don't need to really worry about that. So let's look at protein, carbohydrate, and fiber. Okay, so this is interesting. So here's the little guys, 4 to 8 years old. Boys and girls are the same. 19 grams of protein is not that much. Remember, 8 grams of protein in a cup of milk. Okay, you start looking at 1 ounce of meat has 7 grams of protein. They can easily consume too much protein. Moderate protein is good, but this is where the requirements are. So then you look at boys and girls ages 9 to 13. They need the same amount of protein, goes up, still easy to get. In fact, most Americans get 2 or 3 times as much protein as they need. Kids are no different. Carbohydrates, do you remember why there's a requirement for carbohydrates? Anybody?
Basic brain function?
Yeah, brain function. We need carbohydrates for because the brain needs glucose. And the estimates are always at least 130 grams a day is the minimum amount. Below that, we start breaking down protein to produce glucose by gluconeogenesis. So we don't want to do that. So this is why this number is here. Same as for adults. And then fiber is a little different. And one of the reasons is because boys generally, I don't have the calories on here, but they generally consume more calories. But this is close to what adults need. Okay, so I remember we talked about this, that there are a few nutrients that we worry about per age group. Not that many. One is iron. Iron, at this age, you know, these young children, 4% of kids are anemic, and that's scary. Okay. If you look at the DRIs, it's not that high. But I posit that those early weaning years where you're giving complementary foods to kids and developing their taste preferences can affect their iron status later on. Do you remember, it was on the test, what kind of foods did you offer to a toddler to make sure they get enough iron? Infant, toddler.
Baby food cereal.
Fortified cereal, absolutely. Baby food cereal, it's got iron, zinc in it. Anything else?
Beans and lentils, eggs.
Pardon me? I didn't hear you.
Beans
It
and
was
lentils.
2 of us. Baby food meats is one of them, right?
Yeah, baby food meats for the infants, and then later on, after the age of 1, then they can have whatever, and they can have chicken. They can also have fish, right? And if they don't eat animal products, they can have beans and dried fruits and stuff like that. But the cereals and the baby food meats are what I emphasized early on because they really help set the stage here. But these kids that start out early at risk can sometimes get into severe deficiency later on. So you want to think about, and I want to give an umbrella statement here, is like, you know, we look at the American diet, and the American diet, we're so used to it, we don't even think about it enough, but the American diet is filled with fast food and sugar sweetened beverages and this and this and this, and they're setting the stage for metabolic disorder for the kids, for their whole life, right? We've accepted and we're used to a highly processed diet. And I don't think I can state this enough, but if we don't do that, if we can help parents get away from that and make real food to the extent possible at home, then they can be protected from some of these issues, because processed foods are high in sugar, high in salt. There's iron in there if it's been added, right? But their taste preferences aren't for real foods. And so what we want to do is provide a diet that's filled with whole foods, then look at their iron status, beans, all this stuff. So it's a concept that we've gotten so far away from, it's crazy. So calcium, here's what I have to say. The bone building years start early. I actually think after this is where it becomes very critical. You guys are probably in your prime bone building years. And why I say that is I'm going to say between the ages of 20 and 30, you have more power to stock up stock up calcium and so forth in your bones and improve your bone density than any other time you will have. Okay, once people get older, menopause, for example, for women, no matter what, our calcium status goes down, 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 down. Our bone density goes down, 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 down. So if you can get it up high when you're young by being physically active and having a really good diet, then you've got a good place to go from. So if you're going to decrease your bone density later on, you're not going to end up in the gutter. You've got strong bones to start with. This starts in childhood. Okay, so in childhood, we want to make sure kids get diets rich in calcium. Do you remember food sources of calcium besides milk?
Spinach.
Leafy greens,
What?
dark leafy greens.
Yeah. There are a variety of greens, dried fruits, eggs, beans. There's a variety of foods that taken together, kale, make a really calcium-rich diet. Sorry, I keep saying iron. I need a nap. But, we can get there from whole foods. Okay, but we have to do it. Okay, so calcium, we need a lot. We don't have to get calcium from dairy, as we just talked about. We can get it from all those. Actually, many of the foods that provide iron also provide calcium. Whole foods approach, whole grains approach, whole produce approach, all those things help provide nutrition that you can't actually get at with supplements or processed foods. Okay, so the next comment here is on hydration. I have a lot of feelings about this. Our world is filled with bottles of water that cost money, that ruin our environment, that we should not be having to pay for anyway, and that we're in such a habit of doing. And our world is also filled with Gatorade and sports drinks and all these other things. Okay, so what the norm is now, and think about kids on a sports team. You know, I've seen a lot of this, right? Sports teams, let's say 8-year-olds, right? Parents bring in stuff. We're supposed to, middle of between the innings or whatever, here's your food. I've seen parents bring in Gatorade and, sort of candy bars. Then I've seen parents bring in sliced oranges and water. And it's all over the board, okay? And we have so much power here to teach kids to like water, drink water for thirst, and to go ahead and if you eat the oranges and eat the other stuff. Think about the difference between a Gatorade that has sodium, potassium, chloride added to it, and chemicals and whatever, versus water plus sliced oranges, right? It's almost mind-blowing to think what else is in the oranges besides those electrolytes that we need. So we have a lot of parents need education on this kind of stuff. And the norms, you guys, the norms are terrible right now. But another thing to keep in mind is that kids can get too hot, and they can underhydrate, and they can run around and play, and you can watch their faces get red. Offer them water, make sure they have good access to water. They may not sweat. Sweating helps. I'm a sweater. I'm so disgusting. I'm sorry, but I regulate my temperature because I go outside exercise and I sweat a lot, right? So pros and cons. But little kids don't always sweat that well. Sweat is what allows the water on your skin, and then the wind hits it and it cools you off, right? It's like you're a cooling tower. If you don't sweat, then you are limited by how well to off-gas some of that heat, right? So giving them water and so forth is beneficial to help them deal with this issue. And we have so much to say about this, but no sugar sweetened beverages and no juice. There's so many reasons for that. I can spend an entire hour on that. Okay, so kids they should limit. These are official guidelines. I want you to know these. Okay, these are official guidelines for kids. This is the AI for sodium. As adults, you're probably getting 3,000 or 4,000 milligrams per day. If you cook at home and you're careful, you can keep it low. Kids that are eating processed or family foods can get way too much. And if they consume excess sugar, here's what happens. Okay, this may seem like, well, okay, it's going to be a long time. They're fine. They're kids. It's going to be a long time. But what happens is these dietary patterns not only affect them, that's their norm and what they consume later, but also they're already starting on cardiovascular disease. I just read an article this morning on American Heart Association and American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations on diet and sugar for kids. And they made such a strong case for these items having a long-term effect on their health. So well, if you raise a child from 0 to 18 years, assuming they actually move out, but so you have that power. But during that time, you're setting their metabolic stage to how well they deal with other foods in the world at large and other nutrients. So we want to keep it down. And this is hard to do because kids want pizza, macaroni and cheese, and puffs, right? So this gets back to the whole real food thing. So here, this is from your book, and it's a little fuzzy, and I apologize. I don't like fuzzy stuff, but here's advice, eating real food. And if you guys do it, if your parents do it that you consult with and they teach your kids to do it, we'll save the world. It's not that hard. We're just not used to it.
That's kind of off track.
Yeah, go.
Is there any foods that you can take to like kind of reverse some of the plaque that builds up from saturated fat?
No. What you do is stop that habit.
Okay.
You can reverse a lot of things. You can reverse hypertension, high risk for fatty liver disease, high risk for diabetes by adopting what we teach in our program, right? Good nutrition. You can do it that way, but it's not like a drug or a particular food that does it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so what we want to do with kids is get them involved. Kids like to cook, get them involved. If you get them involved and you eat at the table with them and they see you eat foods and then you have that, you don't put pressure on them and you don't, you just enjoy your life together, they do so much better. Kids that eat with a family have higher nutrient intake, more fruits and vegetables. And I left this off, but they're less likely to get in trouble for drugs and all the kinds of things that kids get into. So there's so many benefits to this habit of family meals. Now, the other thing is you have to realize is the world changes. And so you can help your kids become the people and the nutritional people they're going to be for a few years, and then the world is going to encroach. And all you can do is do your best here. Sadly, kids this age, look how little she is. Diet starts affecting, advertisement starts to affect how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about the world, how we feel about our bodies, how we feel about our diets. And so next time I'm going to talk about child obesity. So I'm going to start with this and then segue into weight issues with kids. I'm probably going to send you a video to watch before next Monday. And I will put there'll be a 5-minute, 5-point quiz on or something for you to watch it, okay? All right, we're out of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.